Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final deliverable for Business 301. My name is Tristan Wood. Let's get started. So for the first case, we have the China case. So what we know is currently China is not performing well economically. They have been suffering since the global COVID pandemic, and they have been very slow to recover. Now, what they have done, which is something that is not recommended, something that the US has sworn not to ever do, is they've crossed the zero lower bound, which is when the Fed or the Reserve Bank of a country lowers the federal funds rate below 0%. So what this does is causes deflation in an economy. And for a consumer, from their perspective, why would you want to spend money on something if you know that tomorrow it's going to be cheaper than it is today? So that's what's currently happening in China, and consumers in the domestic markets aren't spending as much because of that deflation. So what do we know? Because China's not doing well economically, this is causing other countries around the world to suffer as well, specifically ones that rely on China for trade because, well, they're not getting as much. We know that the exports to the US from China have declined about 13% recently, and this is a historic low because China's always been our biggest trading partner, but now it's Mexico, Canada, even South Korea is some of our biggest partners right now. So what China is trying to do to recover is they're doing something called a China shock, which has been labeled by experts. And this is when they get, or several companies in China get very cheap loans from the States, and they just mass produce cheap items, flood their domestic market, and flood international markets as well. Now, obviously, cheap markets from China aren't the best thing if you want to grow your economy. Let's say for the US, we don't want to purchase cheap cars or machinery from China. We want to make them ourselves so we can benefit our economy. And this is something that other countries can do to become self-reliant from China or to not experience the same economic suffering that they are, is just become self-reliant, build your own machinery, your own factories, your own products, and rely on yourself to perform better. And this is something that the US is doing rather well recently than they have in the past. On to the next case, we have the Deutsche Bank case. This one's quite interesting. So they used to be in the 90s, 80s, 90s. The Goldman Sachs of Europe is what they were dubbed. They have a rich history in Germany, began in the 1800s, survived the World War, both world wars, but they got broken up, but eventually came back together through years and decades. Um, Over the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of trust was lost within the bank, just poor financial decisions. They turned their bank into more of an investment bank than an actual domestic bank for their German citizens. And this kind of changed the whole outlook around the bank. So the rating fell severely from 2012 to 2019. Not trusted by the customers or business partners. They were not able to make their loan payments, their interest payments, which is why the rating fell. On top of that, they have 7 records of toxic security abuses, which means that they lied to investors and customers about certain rates on their assets. They have 15 records of investor protection violations, which is if a whistleblower comes out and says, hey, investors, this is happening, this is not going as how it should be, they're violating their whistleblowers' rights, which again is a terrible reflection on how they treat their employees. And then 6 records of interest rate benchmark manipulation, which is lying about interest rates, which is also a big no-no. So they've caused several violations, lied to their customers, treated their employees with disrespect, and their entire reputation's been pretty much ruined because of this. So there are a few ways they can get back on their feet. One, actually start just focusing less on the investment bank, focus more on your domestic customers, actually being a bank that you offer loans to your citizens, right? And you pay them, or you not pay them, you just offer loans to them like a normal bank would. So improve your credit score first. That Deutsche Bank has to improve their credit score by being good with their loans. Second, treat your employees better yeah, that's a huge thing. If you don't treat your employees with respect or even give them their basic rights, like no one's gonna want to work for you or do business with you. So Deutsche Bank has to improve their image above all else right now. And that's something that they have to work towards, but can be done. For the last case, we have the Anheuser-Busch case. There's a lot of history around this beer company, specifically the brewer. Used to have the largest market share in the US and the world, but because of certain mergers and acquisitions, like InBev and a few others from countries like Canada and more in Europe, they have fell from that global position. One thing that AB hasn't done as well is they haven't expanded into foreign markets. They've always been more of a domestic US, let's focus here. And they do this by investing in all sorts of advertisements in the Super Bowl and for sports teams, sponsoring them, and different sorts of snacks and even fairs and carnivals around the US. So they've always invested in their US markets, have never really expanded beyond. However, they did purchase shares in Tsingtao and in Grupo Modelo. So they do have shares in foreign assets, but they don't try to advertise their own product outside of the US. So because of this, their non-aggressive policy towards investing in foreign markets, other foreign companies are doing the reverse. They're aggressively investing in their foreign investments. So because of this, AB has been threatened in the US, and not only been threatened, but they've been backed into a corner. So what's happened here is that InBev made an attractive offer to AB, one that their shareholders couldn't pass up, but one that Bush the fourth did not appreciate. So one way that they could curb this investment, because it's a terrible offer, they're worth $81.27 per share, but they're only offered 65. So one way they can curb this is by acquiring Grupo Modelo and Tsingtao to halt the merger, but that's about all that can be done to prevent it. However, as we've seen in the current day, InBev actually owns AB now, and they also own Grupo Modelo. So even if AB acquired Grupo Modelo back when they did, it's highly unlikely they could have lasted out much longer before they got another offer from InBev, eventually merging the two companies. That's all. Thank you very much for watching the presentation.